Chapter 20 of Galactic Patrol by E. Smith. Chapter 20. Out from Radalix and into deep space shot the speedster, bearing the gray Lensmen toward Boisia 2, where the Boskonian base was situated. The patrol forces had not even yet been able to locate it definitely, therefore it must be cleverly hidden indeed. It was manned and staffed by Tellurians, and this was fairly close to the line first taken by the pilot of the pirate vessel, whose crew had been so decimated by Van Buskirk and his Valerians. There couldn't be so many Boskonian bases with Tellurian personnel, Kinnison reflected. It was well within the bounds of possibility, even of probability, that he might again encounter here his former but unsuspecting shipmates. Since the Boisian system was less than 100 parsecs from Radalix, a couple of hours found the Lensmen staring down upon another green and earthly world. Very earthly indeed was this one. There were polar ice caps, areas of intensely dazzling white. There was an atmosphere, deep and sweetly blue, filled for the most part with sunlight, but flecked here and there with clouds, some of which were slow-moving storms. There were continents, bearing mountains and plains, lakes and rivers. There were oceans, studded with islands great and small. But Kinnison was no planetographer, nor had he been gone from Tellus sufficiently long, so that the sight of this beautiful and homelike world aroused in him any qualm of nostalgia. He was looking for a pirate base, and dropping his speedster as low into the night side as he dared, he began his search. Of man or of the works of man he at first found little enough trace. All human or pseudo-human life was apparently still in a savage state of development, and except for a few scattered races, or rather tribes, of burrowers and of cliff or cave dwellers, it was still nomadic, wandering here and there without permanent habitation or structure. Animals of scores of genera and species were there in myriads. But neither was Kinnison a biologist. He wanted pirates, and it seemed that was the one form of life which he was not going to find. But finally, through sheer grim bulldog pertinacity, he was successful. That base was there, somewhere. He would find it, no matter how long it took. He would find it if he had to examine the entire crust of the planet, land and water alike, kilometer by plotted cubic kilometer. He set out to do just that, and it was thus that he found the Boskonian stronghold. It had been built directly beneath a towering range of mountains, protected from detection by mile upon mile of native copper and of iron ore. Its entrances, invisible before, were even now not readily perceptible, camouflaged as they were by outer layers of rock, which matched exactly in form, color, and texture the rocks of the cliffs in which they were placed. Once those entrances were located, the rest was easy. Again he set his speedster into a carefully observed orbit, and came to ground in his armor. Again he crept forward, furtively and skulkingly, until he could perceive a shimmering web of force. With minor variations, his method of entry into the Boskonian base was similar to that he had used in making his way into the patrol base upon Radalix. He was, however, working now with a surety and a precision which had then been entirely lacking. His practice upon the patrolmen and his terrific bout with the four Lensmen had given him knowledge and technique. His sitting in judgment, during which he had touched almost every mind in the vast assemblage, had taught him much. And above all, the grisly finale of that sitting, horribly distasteful and soul-racking as it had been, had given him training of inestimable value, necessitating as it had the infliction of the ultimate penalty. He knew that he might have to stay inside that base for some time. Therefore he selected his hiding place with care. He could, of course, blank out the knowledge of his presence in the mind of anyone chancing to discover him, but since such an interruption might come at a critical instant, he preferred to take up his residence in a secluded place. There were, of course, many vacant suites in the officers' quarters. All bases must have accommodations for visitors, and the Lensman decided to occupy one of them. It was a simple matter to obtain a key, and inside the bare but comfortable little room, he stripped off his armor with a sigh of relief. Leaning back in a deeply upholstered leather armchair, he closed his eyes and let his sense of perception roam throughout the great establishment. With all of his newly developed power he studied it, hour after hour and day after day, When he was hungry, the pirate cooks fed him, not knowing that they did so. He had lived on iron rations long enough. When he was tired, he slept, with his eternally vigilant Lens on guard. Finally, he knew everything there was to be known about that stronghold, and was ready to act. He did not take over the mind of the base commander, but chose instead the chief communications officer, as the one most likely and most intimately to have dealings with Helmuth. For Helmuth, he who spoke for Boskoni, had for many long months been the Lensman's definite objective. But this game could not be hurried. Bases, no matter how important, did not call Grand Base, except upon matters of the most dire urgency, and no such matter eventuated. Nor did Helmuth call that base, since nothing out of the ordinary was happening, to any pirate's knowledge, that is, and his attention was more necessary elsewhere. One day, however, there came crackling in a triumphant report. A ship working out of that base had taken noble booty indeed, no less a prize than a fully supplied hospital ship of the patrol itself. As the report progressed, Kinnison's heart went down into his boots, and he swore bitterly to himself. How in all the 9 hells of Valeria had they managed to take such a ship as that? Hadn't she been escorted? Nevertheless, as chief communications officer, he took the report and congratulated heartily, through the ship's radio man, its captain, its officers, and its crew. "Mighty fine work. Helmuth himself shall hear of this," he concluded his words of praise. "How'd you do it, with one of the new maulers?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Our mauler, accompanying us just out of range, came up and engaged theirs. That left us free to take this ship. We locked on with magnets, cut our way in, and here we are." There they were indeed. The hospital ship was red with blood. Patients, doctors, interns, officers, and operating crew alike had been butchered with the horribly ruthless savagery which was the customary technique of all the agencies of Boskoni. Of all that ship's personnel, only the nurses lived. They were not to be put to death, yet, in fact, and under certain conditions, they need not die at all. They huddled together, a little knot of white-clad misery in that corpse-littered room, and even now one of them was being dragged away. She was fighting viciously, with fists and feet, with nails and teeth. No one pirate could handle her. It took 2 of the huskies to subdue that struggling fury. They hauled her upright, and she threw back her head in panting defiance. There was a cascade of red bronze hair, and Kinnison saw Clarissa McDougal. He remembered that there had been some talk that they were going to put her back into space service. The Lensman decided instantly what to do. "Stop, you swine!" he roared through his pirate mouthpiece. "Where do you think you're going with that nurse?" "To the captain's cabin, sir." The huskies stopped short in amazement as that roar filled the room, but answered the question concisely. "Let her go." Then, as the girl fled back to the huddled group in the corner, he said, "Tell the captain to come out here, and assemble every officer and man of the crew. I want to talk to everybody at once." He had a minute or two in which to think, and he thought furiously but accurately. He had to do something, but whatever he did must be done strictly according to the pirate's own standards of ethics. If he made one slip, it might be Aldebaran 1 all over again. He knew how to keep from making that slip, he thought. But also, and this was the hard part, he must work in something that would let those nurses know that there was still hope, that there were a few more acts of this drama yet to come. Otherwise, he knew with a stark cold certainty what would happen. He knew of what stuff the space nurses of the patrol were made, knew that they could be driven just so far and no further alive. There was a way out of that, too. In the childishness of his hospitalization, he had called Nurse McDougal a dumbbell. He had thought of her, and had spoken to her quite frankly, in uncomplimentary terms. But he knew that there was a real brain back of that beautiful countenance, that a quick and keen intelligence resided under that red bronze thatch. Therefore, when the assembly was complete, he was ready, and in no uncertain or ambiguous language he opened up. "Listen, you, all of you," he barked savagely. "This is the first time in months that we've made such a haul as this, and you fellows have the brazen gall to start helping yourself to the choicest stuff before anybody else gets a look at it. I tell you now to lay off, and that goes exactly as it lays. I, personally, will kill any man that touches any one of those women before they arrive here at base. Now you, Captain, are the first and worst offender of the lot." And he stared directly into the eyes of the officer, whom he had last seen entering the dungeon of the wheelman. "I admit that you're a good picker." Kinnison's voice was now venomously soft, his intonation distinct, with thinly veiled sarcasm. "Unfortunately, however, your taste agrees too well with mine. You see, Captain, I'm going to need a nurse myself. I think I'm coming down with something. And since I've got to have a nurse, I'll take that red-headed one. I had a nurse once with hair just that color, who insisted on feeding me tea and toast and a soft-boiled egg when I wanted beefsteak. And I'm going to take my grudge out on this one here, for all the red-headed nurses that ever lived. I trust that you will pardon the length of this speech, but I want to give you my reasons in full for cautioning you that this particular nurse is my own particular personal property. Mark her for me, and see to it that she gets here, exactly as she is now." The captain had been afraid to interrupt his superior, but now he erupted. "But see here, Blakesley," he stormed, "she ought to be mine by every right. I captured her. I saw her first. I've got her here." "Enough of that back talk, Captain," Kinnison sneered elaborately. "You know, of course, that you are violating every rule by taking booty for yourself before division at base, and that you can be shot for doing it." "But everybody does it," protested the captain. "Except when a superior officer catches him at it. Superiors get first pick, you know." The Lensman reminded him, suavely. "But I protest, sir. I'll take it up with—" "Shut up!" Kinnison snarled with cold finality. "Take it up with whom you please. But remember this, my last warning. Bring her in to me as she is and you live. Touch her and you die. Now, you nurses, come over here to the board." Nurse McDougal had been whispering furtively to the others, and now she led the way, head high and eyes blazing defiance. She was an actress as well as a nurse. "Take a good long look at this button, right here, marked Relay 46, came curt instructions. "If anybody aboard this ship touches any one of you, or even looks at you as though he wants to, press this button and I'll do the rest. Now, you big red-headed dumbbell, look at me. Don't start begging yet. I just want to be sure that you'll know me when you see me." "I'll know you. Never fear, you brat," she flared, thus informing the Lensman that she had received his message. "I'll not only know you, I'll scratch your eyes out on sight." "That'll be a good trick if you can do it," Kinnison sneered and cut off. "What's it all about, Mac? What has got into you?" demanded one of the nurses, as soon as the women were alone. "I don't know," she whispered. "Watch out, they may have spy rays on us. I don't know anything really, and the whole thing is too wildly impossible, too utterly fantastic to be even partially true. But pass the word along to all the girls to ride this out, because my Grey Lensman is in on it, somewhere and somehow. I don't see how he can be, possibly, but I just know that he is." For at the first mention of tea and toast, before she perceived even an inkling of the true situation, her mind had flashed back instantly to Kinnison, the most stubborn and rebellious patient she had ever had. More, the only man she had ever known who had treated her precisely as though she were a part of the hospital's very furniture. As is the way of women, particularly of beautiful women, she had orated of women's rights and of women's status in the scheme of things. She had decried all special privileges, and had stated, often and with heat, that she asked no odds of any man living or yet to be born. Nevertheless, and also beautiful woman-like, the thought had bitten deep that here was a man who had never even realized that she was a woman, to say nothing of realizing that she was an extraordinarily beautiful one, and deep within her, and sternly suppressed, the thought had still rankled. At the mention of beefsteak she all but screamed, gripping her knees with frantic hands to keep her emotion down. For she had had no real hope. She was simply fighting with everything she had until the hopeless end, which she had known could not long be delayed. Now she gathered herself together and began to act. When the word dumbbell boomed from the speaker, she knew, beyond doubt or peradventure, that it was Kinnison, the Grey Lensman, who was really doing that talking. It was crazy. It didn't make any kind of sense at all. But it was. It must be true. And again, womanlike, she knew with the calm certainty that as long as the Grey Lensman were alive and conscious, he would be completely the master of any situation in which he might find himself. Therefore, she passed along her illogical but cheering thought, and the nurses, also being women, accepted it without question, as the actual and accomplished fact. They carried on, and when the captured hospital ship had docked at base, Kinnison was completely ready to force matters to a conclusion. In addition to the chief communications officer, he now had under his control a highly capable observer. To handle two such minds was child's play to the intellect, which had directed against their full fighting wills the minds of 2 3/4 alert, powerful, and fully worn Lensmen. Good girl, Mac. He put his mind on rapport with hers and sent his message. Glad you got the idea. You did a good job of acting, and if you can do some more as good, we'll be all set. Can do? I'll say I can, she assented fervently. I don't know what you're doing, how you can possibly do it, or where you are, but that can wait. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Make a pass at the base commander, he instructed her. Hate me, the ape I'm working through, you know. All over the place. Get into it big. You maybe could love him, but if I get you, you'll blow out your brains, if any. You know the line. Play up to him with everything you can bring to bear, and hate me all to pieces. Help all you can to start a fight between us. If he falls for you hard enough, the blow-off comes then and there. If not, he'll be able to do us all plenty of dirt. I can kill a lot of them, but not enough of them quick enough. He'll fall, she promised him gleefully. Like 10,000 bricks falling down a well. Just watch my jets. And fall he did. He had not even seen a woman for months, and he expected nothing except bitter resistance and suicide from any of these women of the patrol. Therefore, he was rocked to the heels, set back upon his very haunches, when the most beautiful woman he had ever seen came of her own volition into his arms, seeking in them sanctuary from his own chief communications officer. I hate him, she sobbed, nestling against the huge bulk of the base commander's body, and turning upon him the full blast of the high-powered projectors which were her eyes. You wouldn't be so mean to me. I just know you wouldn't. And her subtly perfumed head sank upon his shoulder. The base commander was just so much soft wax. I'll say I wouldn't be mean to you. His voice dropped to a gentle bellow. Why, you little sweetheart, I'll marry you. I will, by all the gods of space. It thus came about that nurse and base commander entered the control room together, arms about each other. There he is, she shrieked, pointing at the chief communications officer. He's the one. Now let's see you start something, you rat-faced clunker. There's one real man around here, and he won't let you touch me. Yah! She gave him a resounding Bronx cheer, and her escort swelled visibly. Is that so? Kinnison sneered. Get this, baby face, and get it straight. You were marked as mine as soon as I looked the ship over, and mine you're going to be, whether you like it or not, and no matter what anybody else says or does about it. And as for you, Chief, you're too late. I saw her first, and now, you red-headed hussy, come over here where you belong. She snuggled closer into the commander's embrace, and the big man turned purple. What do you mean, too late? He roared. You took her away from the ship's captain, didn't you? You said that superior officers get first choice, and they do. I'm the boss here, and I'm taking her away from you. Get me? You'll stand for it, too, yes, and you'll like it. One word out of you, and I'll have you spread-eagled across the mouth of number 6 projector. Superior officers do not always get first choice, Kinnison replied, with bitter cold ferocity, but choosing his words with care. It depends entirely upon who the two men are. Now was the time to strike. Kinnison knew that if the base commander kept his head, the lives of those valiant women were forfeit, and the Lensman's whole plan seriously endangered. He himself could get away, of course, but he could not see himself doing it under these conditions. No, he must goad the commander to a frenzy. Mac would help. In fact, and without his suggestion, she was even then hard at work fomenting trouble between the two men. You don't have to take that from anybody, big boy, she was whispering urgently. Don't call in a crew to spread eagle him either. Beat him out yourself. You're a better man than he is any time. Blast him down. That'll show him who's who around this base. When the inferior is such a man as I am, and the superior is such one as you are, the biting, contemptuously sneering voice went on, without a break, Such a bloated swine, such a mangy low-down cur, such a pussy-gutted tub of lard, such a worthless, brainless spawn of the lowest dregs of the sourest scum of space, such an utterly incompetent and self-opinionated ass as you are? The outraged pirate chief, bellowing incoherently and wildly mounting rage, was leaping toward a cabinet in which were kept the delameters. Then, in that case, the inferior keeps the red-headed wench himself. Put that on a tape, chief, and eat it. Then, if you are too much of a lily-livered coward to do anything about it yourself, have me spread-eagled, the Lensman concluded cuttingly. Blast him! Blast him down! The nurse had been shrieking. And as the raging commander neared the cabinet, no one noticed that her latest and loudest scream was, Kim, blast him down! Don't wait any longer! Beam him down before he gets a gun! But the Lensman did not act, yet. Although almost every man of the pirate crew stared spellbound, Kinnison's enslaved observer had for many seconds been jamming the sub-ether with Helmuth's personal and urgent call. It was of almost vital importance to his plan that Helmuth himself should see the climax of this scene. Therefore, the communications officer stood immobile, while the profanely raving base commander reached the cabinet, tore it open, seized a delameter, and swung it savagely toward him. End of chapter 20.